There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than any scream. That night, the silence in our house wasn't just empty, it was alive. Heavy. Holding its breath. And so was I. I stood barefoot in the hallway, facing a closed door. The soft flicker of light beneath it danced like a whisper, and the ticking of the clock behind me sounded like thunder in my ears. I wasn't trying to find trouble. I wasn't searching for anything. But when you've lived in loneliness long enough, even silence starts to feel like an invitation. We had a beautiful house. On paper, my life was fine. Married at 38. A stable home. A husband, Mark, who worked hard and brought home a good paycheck. But that's all he brought home. The man I married had become a stranger with a familiar face. Our conversations had turned into briefings, what bills were due, what needed fixing, when he was leaving again. We were sharing a life, but not living one together. Then Jake came. Mark's son from a previous marriage. 19, quiet, and carrying more weight in his eyes than any teenager should. He had been staying with his aunt after his mother died in a car accident. College brought him back to our city, and Mark thought it best if he moved in to save on housing. I agreed. It felt like the right thing to do, but from the moment he walked through the door, something shifted. The house, already too quiet, felt changed. Like someone had opened a door to a room I didn't know existed. Jake wasn't loud or dramatic. He didn't make demands or throw his grief in anyone's face. He was just there, a quiet presence. Polite but withdrawn. He moved like a shadow, always with his hoodie on, headphones in, eyes down. I tried. I asked Mark what Jake liked to eat, cooked meals I hoped would bring some comfort. I left notes on the fridge with reminders or encouragement. I offered rides, small gestures of care. But mostly, he kept to himself. Dinner was the same every night, Mark glued to his phone, Jake offering one-word answers, and me, smiling through the ache in my chest. I watched them, father and son, at the same table, but galaxies apart. Sometimes I wondered how a house full of people could feel. So empty. How I could be surrounded by others and still feel like no one saw me, but Jake, in his silence, began to notice the things no one else did. That he'd do his laundry without being told. He'd clear his dishes without a word. One day, he helped me carry in the groceries without being asked. Small, ordinary things. But they struck me, because I couldn't remember the last time someone asked if I needed anything. There were nights when Mark would leave for business trips, and I wouldn't even notice the space he left behind. But Jake's presence lingered. Not loudly. Not intentionally. Just there. We'd cross paths late at night in the kitchen, he in his hoodie, me in my robe. He'd nod. I'd smile. And sometimes, in that pause, there was a sense of being seen, not desired. Not needed. Just seen. I hated how much it meant to me. One night, I passed by his door. The light was on, a soft, flickering glow. I paused. I don't know why. I wasn't listening, I wasn't snooping. I just stood there, one hand hovering near the doorknob, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't knock, I didn't walk away either. I just stood there, overwhelmed by the weight of 100 unanswered questions. Most of them aimed at myself. What was I doing? What was I hoping for? And why did this house feel more like a museum than a home? The truth is, I wasn't just checking on Jake. I was searching for something, connection, recognition, warmth. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not love. Not romance. Just human contact. Proof that I still mattered. There's a pain that comes from being invisible in your own life. From waking up beside someone who stopped seeing you long ago. From preparing meals, folding laundry, tending to a home that doesn't return the care. Jake never asked anything of me. But the few times he looked at me, really looked, it wasn't with judgment or expectation. Just quiet understanding. Like, maybe he recognized something in me, too. His grief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet and buried deep, but it was there. And in some way, our griefs were mirrors of each other. He lost a mother, I lost a marriage. There's a loneliness that sets in when no one asks how you're doing, not really. When no one notices the effort it takes to keep pretending that everything is fine. Jake didn't ask either. But he noticed. And that noticing became everything. I began to see the signs of someone trying to disappear. Jake spent more and more time in his room. The light would be on late into the night. Sometimes I'd hear faint noises, maybe music, maybe a video. But mostly, there was silence, and I'd stand outside that door, feeling like I was outside of everything. A visitor. In my own life, I never crossed the line. Not in the way people would think. But I did make a choice. I chose not to ignore the ache anymore. I chose to admit the truth, that I was struggling, lonely, and desperate for something to remind me I was still alive inside. That night changed something in me, not because of what happened. But because of what didn't. I stood at that door, frozen. And in that moment, I realized I didn't know who I was anymore. I had become a stranger to myself, quiet, cautious, afraid to speak the truth, and sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away before the silence consumes you entirely. If you've ever stood at a door, real or metaphorical, unsure whether to open it or keep walking, then maybe you understand. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own home, maybe you know what it's like to long for something as simple as being seen. This story isn't neat. It isn't easy. But it's real, and it's time I told it. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because behind every door, there's a story waiting to be heard.